This is the new era. This is the new band, and we're unbreakable.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology. We can make him better than he was. Better, stronger, faster. Actually, better, stronger,
faster. Is that a
faster.
line from Starship Troopers or something?
No, it's actually the $1 Million Man.
$6 Million Man. I know that, and
I don't even know what that is.
We Brits don't do excitement, so this is the best you're gonna get.
Chris is bringing the noise today, apparently.
Speaking of vanilla,
it's just I don't understand why.
I don't think anyone does. I don't think Travis Green understands.
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust. This is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com and CKNW.com. Here they are, fresh from folding towels, sharpening skates, and washing jock straps. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Matt Lee with you here, not in studio, but joined by Anna Forsyth at aforsyth03 on Twitter, and by Adam Ovenel Carter. You can find him on Twitter at AdamFOC. Christopher Golden out with the flu in this one, should be back for next week's episode. Guys, how are you doing? Let's start with Adam, who was absent last week. Adam, good to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you. Yeah, no complaints.
New England Patriots off to their Super Bowl.
Yeah, my New England Patriots off to another Super Bowl. It's tough life as a Patriots fan. Honestly, didn't think they'd be back this year. So I'm pretty confident going into the Super Bowl. It'd be really nice, obviously. Listen, if they win, Brady can retire tomorrow, and I'm happy.
So we're not going to go off the rails and talk about the NFL forever, but very quickly.
Thank God.
Yeah, don't worry, Anna. The Super Bowl 2 weeks from now, Adam. The New England Patriots taking on the LA Rams. Right now, how are you feeling going into that game?
I feel good. I think the Chiefs game, being on the road, being an underdog, was such like an emotional victory that is just like one of those things you have to break through, and then you're golden. So.
Patrick Mahomes, though, sure fun to watch, right?
Oh, he's the best player in the NFL. I don't think it's a question at this point.
But Brady's simply the beneficiary of a Bill Belichick system in your mind, as well as being good, of course.
Yeah, sure. We'll say that.
Anna, how about you? How excited are you for the Super Bowl?
On a scale of 0 to 10, it's definitely in the minus numbers.
Wow.
Wow, why can't you just let other people enjoy things, Anna?
I do, but personally, I am not excited. That was the question, and I answered it honestly.
She did answer it honestly.
That's fair.
And
That's fair.
Even less excited when it's the team that it's there all the time, and Tom Brady and Trump's team, you know? I don't know. Yeah, so it makes me even less excited. I'm sorry, Adam.
Well, you know what? We could talk about the Super Bowl maybe in an off-the-rails episode coming up. In the meantime, Vancouver Canucks still in action as the All-Star break gets ever so close. Elias Pettersson now back in the Canucks lineup after missing, I believe, 5 games with that lower body injury. It's great to have Elias Pettersson back in action, and consequentially, a lot of people talking about playoffs. We're talking about playoffs? Are the Vancouver Canucks a playoff team? Should they be buyers or sellers at the upcoming trade deadline, which is literally just weeks away at this point? That will be the topic of our discussion here on C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
He liked to say the F word.
Oh, then get the here then. Okay, see ya.
Is going to have the F word on it.
I wish I could give you an explanation about it. I can't. You, out of here.
You said the F word, Dad.
You called me the F word.
Right. So I think the theme of this show is Canucks. They're teetering on a playoff spot. They were briefly in one the other day before being bumped out back again. So the question is, with the trade deadline approaching, do you buy or do you sell? I think you guys might have an idea where I'm going this, but I had a conversation with a friend yesterday when we were watching the football game, and he was pretty adamant that it's pretty stupid to want to not make the playoffs. Like, just a couple playoff games would be tons of fun for everyone involved. Why wouldn't you want that? And as someone who's been a fan for so long and hasn't seen a team win, I think in that kind of perspective that you don't want the Canucks to be buyers, because that way they'd be mortgaging what I don't want to say few prospects, but they don't have so much in the bag already that they can be selling them off. They still have a lot of work to do. I think the results lately, with and without Pettersson, kind of speak for themselves, that they're just not quite at the level. They definitely won't be able to compete with a team like Tampa over a 7-game stretch should they even make it to the finals, right? Just when you look at those upper echelon teams. So I think it's a no-brainer for the Canucks to be sellers, and start really building towards that future, because a guy like Edler, he might get you into the playoffs, but right now he's not going to win you anything beyond maybe a playoff round if you're able to steal it. So I'm happy to open this up to you guys, but I just think there's so much more value and worth in selling the assets you have and gaining more and building up a young prospect pool that's already taken steps and shown flashes and turning it into something a lot better than it already is.
Okay, so Anna, I'll let you sort of have the first reply to Adam, what he believes to be the Canucks should still maintain a seller status as we get towards the February trade deadline.
Yeah, I really hope that's the case, because I think it's one of the few deadlines we have left where we have some assets to kind of sell. We've talked in previous episodes about Edler's trade value and Tanev as well, but that value that they have, maybe we have Hutton as well, who might have a few more years of value left in him, but Tanev and Edler especially, their value is rapidly dissipating. So I think we've got to cash in while we can on players like that, if at all possible. Because as Adam mentioned, like, this team without Pettersson doesn't look like a team that could sustain any kind of playoff run. So I really hope that there's something that we can be done at the trade deadline here.
Okay, and let me ask you guys this question. And maybe this is me sort of getting caught up in the Pettersson hype, and what we've seen are the Canucks winning a lot of very close games over the last couple months. Is there such thing as maybe a soft sell? And that's maybe not necessarily trading away backbone players like an Alex Edler or a Chris Tanev or a Brandon Sutter, but let's say trading away some non-recoverable assets. Marcus Granlund is a guy who clearly doesn't have a long future in Vancouver, or maybe selling a guy like Derek Pouliot for whatever assets he can get for him. Would you guys entertain maybe a soft sell, or is it still putting up guys like Edler or Tanev or Sutter on the board?
I think I have no issue with that because, like I said, I think Tanev and Edler are very good players that can get you into the playoffs and help sustain you there. They're just not the guys who are going to put you over the top, right? So if you're able to keep them around, Tanev's still relatively young. So he's still got a few years left with the Canucks, I think. And Edler, if you can get him on, he's playing the best hockey we've maybe ever seen him play.
Yeah, especially on the power play.
Exactly. So if you're able to keep him for, I would say, a short-term 2-3 year deal, then I think that would benefit the team for sure. And if you are able to sell guys like Granlund, get maybe a lower end.
Yeah, no one's thinking like second or third round picks for these guys. But if you can get fourth or fifth or sixth round picks for these guys,
even a third for one of those guys,
right? Yeah, I mean, we saw that the trade for Nielsen getting us a
and
round. So
there you go. I think that's the kind of start of it, right? Yeah,
lower round picks. Yeah,
like a guy like Granlund, as happy as we've been to have him in the past, maybe, or I guess a pleasant surprise as he's a totally replaceable kind of player.
Exactly.
Right? I think those guys you can find on free agent deals. Maybe you might have to overpay a little bit, a la Beagle or Roussel. But I think those guys can be replaced, and then you can still pick up more through the draft. Or a guy like Goldobin might be able to fetch you a bit more if you think that he's not long for the team, right? So I think that's totally reasonable, man.
Okay, so Anna, perhaps on the other side of the spectrum then, what about a soft buy at the trade deadline for the Vancouver Canucks? Are you not willing to buy at all for the trade deadline if you're the Vancouver Canucks?
I just think in the market that's out there right now, you just end up overpaying for short-term players, and we kind of have already done that. So I'd really rather be clearing out the bottom shelves of the cupboard with players like Pouliot and Granlund and getting them out there. And really, there's a few players in Utica that could do a job up here. So I don't think it's necessary that we need to reinvest in short-term players.
Okay, and I would agree, not on short-term players or players on expiring contracts. But let's look at last year's trade deadline as an example. You remember the deal where the Vancouver Canucks traded Philip Holm to Vegas for Brendan Leipsic, who, of course, didn't even make it past Christmas for the Vancouver Canucks this season, and then trading Thomas Vanek to Columbus for Tyler Mott and UC Jokinen. Are those the type of deals, Anna, that you would welcome for the Vancouver Canucks making? Again, you're trading guys like Vanek and Philip Holm, players who had no future here, that were on expiring contracts, for, experiment players that could maybe fit into your lineup.
I'm definitely not against that. It's just if there's some future value to be gained from trading away players like Pouliot and Granlund, I'd much rather have sort of picks than these kind of short-term players. But yeah, if it's a low-risk scenario, I'm not that bothered by it.
Adam, how do you feel about the potential buying at the deadline? Is that a non-starter for you?
Yeah, I think, if we are talking about moving a guy like Granlund, you're able to move him for a similar level defenseman, swapping out. I think the Canucks have a surplus of these
low-end forwards.
There you go, yeah. So if you're able to move them for a low-end defenseman, which the Canucks are amazingly short on, then I think that's a reasonable thing. But, even a guy like Leipsic and those kinds of players are all just so replaceable that I just would rather, like Anna said, sell those assets for something that has more potential, right?
Okay.
A third round pick's not going to be a superstar necessarily, but
sure,
there's that small chance.
Okay, so it sounds like there would be some sort of framework to, let's say, trade a Marcus Granlund, for example, a lower end forward, for, let's say, a upgrade, if you will, or on Alex Biega. Agree or disagree?
Agree.
Yeah, agree. If we can stock our cupboard a little bit, it would definitely be in the defensive end.
Okay, so if I'm reading in between the lines of how we feel about the conversation going into the trade deadline, the Canucks could either be soft buyers or they're going to be soft sellers, but not hard buyers or hard sellers for either spectrum.
I think that's more likely. I could still see them, if they're blown away by an offer for Tanev or somebody, and I could see them being hard sellers.
But definitely not hard buyers.
No, I don't think that is a thing. I think just the way they've been making moves lately that they kind of realize where they're at.
Mm-hmm. So Anna, for you in that case, if we're not going to be hard buyers, that means things like top end picks or prize prospects like Quinn Hughes are simply just not on the table.
Yeah, I think if you want to look at a team that has done rebuilding right, they haven't got everything right, but Toronto just stockpile picks and not all of them will make it, but just by increasing that likelihood, you want to do something like that, and you don't want to give away the kind of value they have in, like, the value that Judd Brackett has built up with his kind of scouting has really surprised us, so I wouldn't want to see any of that thrown away.
No, fair enough. Yeah, I think I would echo a lot of what you guys have said so far, and it's the fact that the Canucks are just in this holding pattern. You are letting the kids get free reign right now to perform as well as they can. At this point, if you're on team tank or team playoffs or team development, I'm fully on team development right now. For me, it is very much a wait and see attitude with what the kids can do in the months of January and in February. The trade deadline is going to come and go. I don't expect the Canucks to be big buyers. I don't expect them to be big sellers. However, at the end of the day, if the Canucks make the playoffs, it's great for the kids' development. And if they don't make the playoffs and they are mathematically eliminated, for me, it is simply tanking as much as you can to ensure you get the highest pick possible. Adam, as someone who has been on Team Tank for a very long time, has your opinion changed at all? Are you on Team Tank, or are you on Team Playoffs, or are you on Team Development?
That's us. I mean, at this point, I don't think you can tank because I think the team is just good enough to not tank. So, a soft sell and development is totally fine with me. I just don't want to do anything rash and stupid.
You could tank, by the way, if you were struck with injuries, enough injuries.
You could. I mean, if Pettersson, this last injury took him up for the season, then, tear the whole thing down kind of thing. But the Canucks' three best players, I think, would be Horvat, Boeser, Pettersson. I don't know if anybody wants to argue that.
No, agree.
But they're all, 24? Horvat's 24. They're all 24 and under. So their window isn't even open yet, really, right? Like, if it is, it's just cracked open. Like they've still got plenty of time, so there's no rush to do anything. I think Pettersson's a borderline MVP candidate the way that he's been able to keep this team relevant. But he's still got so much room to grow. So I just don't think there's any rush to make a playoff push just yet.
Anna, how about you? Do you feel like there's a team playoffs? Is there like a third person in the ring, so to speak, where it's team development?
Yeah, I think that's the key here, right? Because there's players on this team that also need development. We've argued back and forth about players like Goldobin and players like him, and it will be key the rest of the season to see what future, if any, they have, and to develop those young stars that we have in Horvat and Pettersson and Besser. So, and there's that sort of cream of the crop in Utica as well. So I think that will be the key over the next few months here. And it's not necessarily tanking. It's just doing the best we can for these players while not putting too much pressure on them to push for the playoffs that if we make it, we won't really go anywhere.
Similar to the discussion we had on the trade deadline, Quinn Hughes back at the University of Michigan, or Michigan University, I should say, after the World Junior Championships. If my memory serves, even if he were to get to the Frozen Four, he still would not be available to the Canucks until about the beginning of April, I believe, possibly earlier, of course, if Michigan is eliminated early. While we're thinking ahead and towards the end of the regular season, Adam, if the Canucks are in a playoff position by the time Quinn Hughes' season with Michigan is over, do you bring him in and burn a year on his contract to get him into some games and perhaps be with this team if they were to make the playoffs?
I think you do that regardless, like the Canucks did with Besser, right? Like, he's the kind of player you don't want to mess around with. You just want to get him up and signed in your organization, which I don't think would be an issue regardless. But I think that's totally – I mean, the Canucks did that with Hansen, I think in 2007 or whatever, right?
I remember.
And that's when he got his first taste, really. So I think it's a great way. It's a high-pressure situation, sure, but I think Hughes is the kind of guy who thrives on it.
Quinn Hughes being added to this team for a potential playoff run would certainly be like a mini ad at the trade deadline as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So I do think that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, just to mention, the dates have been announced today, I believe, for the Frozen Four. And if he was to make it part into the semifinals, he wouldn't be available for regular season Canucks.
Okay. We're going to take a bit of a break. When we come back, we'll talk about Jacob Markstrom and also the dumpster fire that is the Edmonton Oilers. Coming up next, C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
Okay, so very quickly, before we get to Jacob Markstrom and Thatcher Demko, Adam, you mentioned before the break, or actually during the break, that Quinn Hughes named Corey Pronman's #1 prospect in his midseason rankings. I believe, and maybe you can help me out here because I didn't read the entirety of the article, Quinn Hughes was one of 3 to get the elite designation from Corey Pronman. I think Martin Nakash was one, and gosh, I can't remember the other one.
Yeah, those two, I don't know if it was 2 or 3, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I read Hughes and kind of skimmed the rest for other Canucks. But, yeah, I mean, you were talking about getting a free ad at the trade deadline. Getting the #1 prospect would be a heck of an addition. I mean, basically, he just talked about how unbelievable his skating is, best skater he's maybe ever seen, and stuff like that. So it's nice to read, and it's incredibly reassuring. So
I would say as well, Quinn Hughes and the experience that he got at the World Juniors cannot be understated. I think he was clearly the best player on Team USA, and he was driving the play quite often for them as well. So getting Quinn Hughes would be a huge addition to the Vancouver Canucks lineup if they were to be in the playoffs. But you never know. Getting to goaltender talk, and with the tandem that is now Jacob Markstrom and Thatcher Demko, we've seen a very long stretch of success from Jacob Markstrom. Some of his numbers in the last 20 or so games, Anna, have been mind-boggling. But the question around Jacob Markstrom has always been about consistency. I don't think anyone here on this podcast doubts that Jacob Markstrom is a goaltender very much capable of stealing games for his team. The question about Jacob Markstrom, though, is his consistency. So, having seen the tale of two halves from Jacob Markstrom this season, Anna, are you buying or selling that Jacob Markstrom has fully developed into a number one goaltender?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you talked about stealing games there, because that's always been the criticism of Markstrom, is that he can play well even in a long stretch there, but he isn't capable of standing up for his team when they let him down. But I think we have seen over the last couple of weeks that he is capable of doing that, because I don't think the Canucks have got much defensively better, but he is kind of making those saves and kind of getting down to the nitty gritty of the game and following that through, which I think is really impressive. I think it's still the plan that Demko is going to be the goaltender of the future, but it kind of reassures us that we can really take our time with Demko, because Markstrom is going from an okay goalie to really a good, solid NHL goalie.
Adam, buying the hype on Jacob Markstrom? Is he a number one goaltender, or is the jury still out on him?
Matt, sorry, Anna, for the football analogy again, but you and I talked about Case Keenum for the Minnesota Vikings last year. He's a career backup, but then has a career year and was a free agent at the end of it. So what do you do with him? And I think it's kind of similar to that, where this year is an outlier. It's not. I don't think you can just all of a sudden become a crazy good number one goalie in the NHL after being a fringe starter, I guess, for the majority of your career. I think he's played very well, and he doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. But I'm just not ready to anoint him the goalie for the next 3 years. I think right now it's his job to lose. Demko would have to take it away, or Markstrom would have to lose it for the rest of the year. But then going into next season, I think Demko might be given the first nod.
Okay, so let's talk about Thatcher Demko. Anna, you saw how he performed against the Buffalo Sabres on Friday night, and he looked pretty great. I think it was something around the mark of 35 plus saves for Thatcher Demko.
36.
And despite, 4 goals against in that game, Thatcher Demko made quite a few acrobatic saves to preserve the win for the Canucks and pick up his first regular season win. I think what we saw on Friday night was a good glimpse of the future of what Thatcher Demko can do. We saw the athleticism, we saw the potential, and it's very hard not to get excited about what Thatcher Demko can do. But what's the plan for Thatcher Demko? And you and I talked about this last week. Do you believe Thatcher Demko is going to gradually steal the starter's net from Jacob Markstrom, or is there a plan in place for Thatcher Demko to, play maybe 25% of the games and gradually get him up to a 50-50 split?
Yeah, I don't think after one game, as impressive as it was, I've changed my mind on where he's going down the stretch. Like, I think he's still not going to get above really 30 or so games next year. Probably, roughly at 30 mark. But I think what we saw, it really does seem like he's not at all afraid of the limelight. That was his second NHL game, second win, and against some pretty high-end players. I don't think many people gave us a shot against Buffalo, especially with Skinner coming back in. So the fact that he hung on there, made that 36 save performance, it shows a lot of grit, but hasn't massively altered anything. I think it's still the plan of very slowly getting him to a level where he can be the number one, but I don't think that's going to happen beyond in the next year or 2 years.
Adam, how do you feel about Thatcher Demko? Is it a plan where he plays maybe 25% of the games and gradually gets to a 50-50 split? Or is it just a kind of a wait-and-see attitude with Thatcher Demko?
I think it's maybe 25% of the games this year, but I think like he's proven all he needs to prove at the lower levels, and he's got more potential now than Markstrom does. So I think you start next year going into it with the idea of maybe a 50-50 split, and then see who plays better from there. I mean, it's right now it's tough because Markstrom is playing so well, so I don't really know, and who knows how long that will last, if it goes into next year. So I don't really have a good read on it, but I think that the time is now Markstrom's not Luongo, so I think the time is now to give, your number 2 prospect a chance to prove himself.
Okay. By the way, to answer the Quinn Hughes question, I think Ryan Beach from The Athletic just posted the story now on when Quinn Hughes could join the Vancouver Canucks. He says that depending with the dates, as Anna mentioned, the Quinn Hughes could be available to the Canucks as early as March 9th or as late as March 23rd, depending on how the Big Ten playoffs shake out. So it could be actually even before April for Quinn Hughes. So that definitely leads you to wonder how the Canucks could use Quinn Hughes. And by the way, I think it's regardless of whether they're in the playoffs or if they're out of the playoffs, it does seem clear, as Adam mentioned, that the Canucks are probably going to try and get Quinn Hughes in a Canucks jersey before the end of the season, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And I think if at all possible, it would be great to see him. I mean, he's one of those players, like Demko's kind of done all he can do. I think Quinn Hughes has shone at the NCAA level, so it would be great to see what he can do at the high level.
Right. And to answer the first question we had about Quinn Hughes with respect to Corey Pronman's list of rankings, he was one of 3 NHL prospects to be given elite status, Adam. Martin Nakash from Carolina, one of them, and Owen Tippett from Florida, actually, the third one. Yes. I think that's interesting, by the way. I didn't think Owen Tippett was that great at the World Juniors.
He was one of the better forwards, but that's not
Is it worth elite status, though? I think that's a little premature.
Yeah, that surprised me a little too, but...
Anything else that you guys wanted to add on before we start getting to a little bit more general other things about the NHL?
Do we want to talk about the return of Pettersson?
We could talk about the return of Pettersson. It just seems like we haven't gone a single podcast without talking about Pettersson, but we made it 27 minutes without talking about Elias Pettersson. First of all, we don't deserve Elias Pettersson.
No, I don't think the world deserves Elias Pettersson. He's too good for this world.
He's such a joy. His reaction when Horvat scored was adorable.
Yeah, quite.
He was just as amped as Horvat was about him scoring that goal.
Yeah, it's true.
I do think that there is something to be said about the quote-unquote trickle-down effect that Pettersson has. Like, this is a guy who clearly wants to win, and he wants to be successful every time he plays hockey. And I do think that that's starting to rub off on the rest of the roster.
Yeah, I agree. I think seeing that player of that elite skill, but someone who just still works so hard at his game, the fact that we've seen improvement from him in this short space of time, I think really is a great example to all players on the team to keep working and keep driving and playing with someone. It's that skilled. It's just so exciting.
Are we talking about Pettersson or Tom Brady?
Yeah. Who's looking forward to seeing Elias Pettersson at the All-Star festivities this weekend? Can the Canucks make it 2 in a row for the MVP?
It would be fun. I mean, he's tailor-made for a 3-on-3
Is Pettersson going to take part in the accuracy competition and or the hardest shot competition?
Yeah, I mean, he won the hardest shot.
They should put him in the accuracy.
Yeah, they should. It would be a waste if they didn't, but yeah, I was pretty surprised he won the hardest shot at the Super Skills, so I mean, why not?
I think it was just over 100, right, for Pettersson?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting watching Pettersson. It's like I think that the rest of the NHL have noticed that the hype train for Elias Pettersson has left the station, and it is fully on. By the way, speaking and sticking with Elias Pettersson, I've seen a lot of people over the last little bit, especially after the Canucks and Red Wings game over the weekend, a lot of Pettersson comparisons to Datsuk, and I think that's amazing because I just loved Pavel Datsuk when he was with the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, and it's something we touched on when he first started. What is his ceiling? And we said cautiously Pavel Datsuk, but his hands and his defensive ability, it parallels Datsuk pretty well, I think.
Sorry, go ahead, Anna.
Oh, I was just going to say that Datsuk is the kind of player, when you watched him, you would just think, even if he was in the most difficult situation, they'd pull out something special. And you kind of think of that when Pettersson's on the puck. Like, think about that when he fell over and he still managed to pass the puck across for a player to get.
Yeah, and so many little things, skating up the ice, and he just casually dekes three guys, or not three, but he makes a couple moves and he's all of a sudden getting a chance on net, and you don't really know how it happened, but you just kind of accept it. It happened and you don't know how.
Yeah. I'm looking at Pavel Datsuk's numbers right now, and there were quite a few 80 and 90 point seasons in there, and Datsuk finished a couple points shy of 100 on a few of those seasons as well. And if Pettersson gets to Datsuk status, I think that the Canucks do have a quote-unquote elite level player on their hands.
Yeah, for sure.
I love Elias Pettersson.
It is nice.
Can we talk a little bit about the Edmonton Oilers before we let go on the podcast?
We should, just because it's fun.
The Edmonton Oilers are really bad at hockey, and their manager is even worse at his job.
Is he the worst GM
it's
in
not
the
even
NHL?
close.
And
It's
by
not
a
even
long
close.
shot? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't think
just
so.
today, I was minding my own business, doing my job, and a friend texts me saying that did you hear that the Oilers have re-signed Mikko Koskinen to a 3-year, $4.5 million deal? And I texted back saying, you mean 3 years, 4.5 total, as in a $1.5 million per year salary? And he said, no, it's a $4.5 million per year deal. And I just lost it. Like, I cannot believe that after 30 NHL games, Peter Chiarelli thinks that Mikko Koskinen is worth $4.5 million a year for the next 3 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, you told me just before the show started.
You couldn't believe it.
Was incredulous. I am incredulous. It's
when I saw it on Twitter, I was just like, Koskinen is who I think he is, right? Like, I actually second guessed myself on remembering who the player was, because I was like, that can't be right.
And we've seen it. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, last 10 games, 4.06 goals against average and an .877 save percentage. Like, how do you look at that? That's 30% of his career games. Those are his numbers. And you decide that's worth $4.5 million over 3 years.
Do you want to hear the other good part of this deal? Mikko Koskinen comes with a no movement clause.
No way. I thought Rashog said it didn't.
I'm looking at Cap Friendly right now, and there's a big NMC next to his name. Oh, that's for this season. For some reason, he has a no movement clause for this season.
That is weird. And then what about their other moves today? Waiving Ryan Spooner and Ty Ratty.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because Anna, you remember this. We had been doing the C4 fantasy draft, and I think I was chatting up Ty Ratty as a sleeper pick. Remember that?
I do.
And Ty Ratty goes right back on waivers. I think this is it for Ty Ratty. 25 years old and sort of done. Maybe there's another team that takes a chance on him.
I could see someone like the Canucks taking a chance on him.
Yeah, I don't see it. But is there a team that manages to piss away prime years of their great players or stunt the development of their young players better than the Edmonton Oilers?
No.
No. I mean, they're the case against tanking for a reason, right? Like, they had 3 first overall picks and they did absolutely nothing with them. And then they have Connor McDavid, who is in on like 80% of the team's goals, and they still can't get above 500. Like, it's amazing.
Oh, I was going to ask you this question last week, and I don't know if I asked you this question last week either, Anna. But if the Edmonton Oilers came to the Vancouver Canucks and offered Jesse Puljujarvi for Nikolai Goldobin straight up, who says yes and who says no?
That's a good question. I think the Canucks would say yes. The Canucks would say yes to that deal. They would for sure. Because I think they're over.
But how leery are you of sending another talented player to the Edmonton Oilers?
Yeah, but what's going to happen there? What's the danger there?
I know. I think, we kind of know Goldobin's ceiling, right?
So you would do that deal?
Yeah, Puljujarvi's been a pretty massive disappointment.
But do you think that there's obviously some untapped potential in there still?
There is, but I'm look at guys like Magnus Paajarvi and Niall Yakupov, and they're not guys that turned into anything once they left the Oilers. So I don't know if I would want. I would probably prefer Goldobin just because I think he's being misused with the Canucks and has more potential than he's given a chance for. But
I'd agree with Adam there, but I do think that like Ben Hutton, they do kind of have a plan for Goldobin, but I don't necessarily agree with the way they're playing it out. But I do think he is a bit of a project player for the Canucks. I just don't think that's necessarily using him in the right way.
Yeah, fair enough. I think this was asked on Patreon, on Discord as well, but I'll ask you guys this question. If the Edmonton Oilers also offered Milan Lucic for Louis Eriksson straight up, who says yes and who says no? FYI, Lucic has one extra year to 2022-23 at $6 million. They both have the same cap hit, though.
I'm taking it.
Oh my god! And
you
felt dirty just saying that, didn't you?
Not in this case. Like, it's not close. Lucic has 2 goals this year, and he's making $1 million more than Eriksson for another year. I'm not touching him.
Full no movement clause too.
And he still has Bruin stench on him, so no.
He does have 5 goals, by the way, this year. But who's counting?
Ooh.
Oh, he's up to 5 now. Okay,
that's a 10-goal pace. I don't want to brag, but and you said that they waived Ryan Spooner as well today.
They sure did. So that's the end of the Eberle deal.
Man, the Oilers suck.
The Oilers need wingers, and they've traded away 2 top-line wingers in the past year plus for peanuts. It's incredible.
So then, just to cap off this discussion, does Peter Chiarelli make it to the end of the season?
Well, I'll make it through the trade deadline, I think. Because you just don't make these moves and then get fired.
But does he make it to the end of the season?
So I don't think he's there for the draft. I think he's gone
sometime in between the end of the regular season and the draft is what you're saying.
But I could see. I mean, you don't make these moves if you're on the verge of getting fired.
But do you think the ownership are just giving him enough rope to hang himself, or is it past that now?
I think it's past that. Yeah, you know what would be the funniest Edmonton Oilers thing? Is if they fire Chiarelli and then they bring in someone of the old Oilers guard like Craig McTavish or Tom Rennie.
Craig McTavish.
Someone who's been far removed from the NHL, and they bring someone else from the old NHL, the old Oilers era, so to speak.
I could definitely see
or Mark Messier.
Oh, wow.
God, wouldn't that be?
But don't tell me you can't see something like that happening.
Oh, for sure. We know how the Oilers need to play. Something.
Also, they do it just to spite us.
Yeah, but you know what? I would love the Oilers to do something like that because, again, they're just pissing away all these prime Connor McDavid years.
Just one more quick note. Puljujarvi in the 2016 World Juniors had 5 goals and 12 assists.
Playing with Patrick Laine, of course. But, yes, your point is made, though.
Yeah,
I still think that there is, and I agree with you, Adam, I think that there is still some untapped potential for Jesse Puljujarvi, but I think we can all agree, definitely not living up to the hype of a 4th overall draft pick.
No, definitely not.
That's going to wrap it up for us here on the C4 podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Anna, how about you tell people where they can find us? And also a shout out to those of our patrons who are on Discord as well.
Yeah, you can find us at Canucks Hockey canuckshockeyblog.com. You can find us on Twitter at the C4 Podcast. You can find us on Facebook at C4 Podcast. And you can find us on Discord, which Matt alluded to, and that's where all the chat is going down, where we badmouth the Edmonton Oilers all day, every day.
We did it a lot today, by the way.
We did. I know. It started on off topic and then went straight to Gate 16 because it couldn't be contained. So yeah, you need to find us at bit.ly/C4 Podcast, all caps. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, good.
Adam,
bit.ly.
Any last words for you? I know the Super Bowl is more than 2 weeks away, so we don't have to talk about the Super Bowl yet for another podcast.
Yeah, I'll save that for next week.
Oh, can't wait.
But, no, it's... Well, Anna, maybe I'll invite you over for my Super Bowl party. Last year I drank way too much. I threw up a lot.
Delightful.
I did. I was nervously drinking the entire game. It was rough. Didn't help that.
I had a great time at last year's Super Bowl. I was in Tofino with my special lady, and we watched the Super Bowl while looking at the awesome beachfront view that we had. And
that's pretty great. Matt, do you want to do that?
No,
with
Adam,
me?
You would appreciate this. We also had Tacofino that night too. The Tacofino food truck.
Oh, there you go.
Original Tacofino.
Yes, it was great. We had this awesome seafood chowder that I like. It still haunts my dreams. I want to go back there just for that. Do they have that at the other Tacofinos?
I went to the new Tacofino last week.
The one Tacofino Ocho.
Yes, and it was divine. Like
good.
The cod taco was amazing.
I think.
Well, the fish taco.
I think we'll make this. We'll say this as a topic for next week. We will say this as a topic for next week's OTR or something, but we will also discuss the merits of, is a taco considered a sandwich?
Let's not do that. We've done that already.
Have we done that already? I can't remember.
Yeah.
I still maintain that they are. They are a Mexican sandwich.
Nope.
All right, whatever.
No.
That's going to do it for us here in the C4 Podcast. Adam, any last words from you? I think I already went to you, didn't I? No, I said Adam.
You did.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
well, that's going to wrap it up for us. I do want to give a special shout out to The Dad Lee, whose 60th birthday is tomorrow, actually.
Aw.
So
happy
I was considering this and I didn't do it, but I might still do it. I actually considered reaching out to Bo Horvat on Instagram and asking him if he could autograph something for my dad. But no, I don't
throw
think
it
I'm
over
gonna
the
do
fence.
Oh, you should.
Yeah, just throw it over the fence when you're done. But no,
We'll just ask him to say happy birthday.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool, but
that would
I don't
make
know.
His day.
I don't want to be
year.
creepy because my dad has already done that enough for everybody.
It's true.
I would like to also mention that during Bo Horvat's quote-unquote scoring slump up until the Detroit game, my dad was saying that he was going to go over across the street to tell him to give him some of his pointers. And I was like, Dad, just leave him alone.
Oh my God.
I don't think he was actually serious, but it would have been a disaster. Anyway, make sure you check us out, C4 Podcast, on CanucksHockeyBlog.com and at all of the social media channels that Anna has mentioned. With all that said, we're out.
Thanks for listening to the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com.